I believe the legislature ought to take a very hard look at the option of decertification of the 2020 Wisconsin presidential election.
Okay, Emerald, that sounds like a really big deal for a special counsel to say something like that. Who is this guy? Where is this coming from? What's he talking about?
So Wisconsin has been conducting an investigation into potential election fraud into the 2020 election. As part of that investigation, you saw the special counsel there, but there was also a report submitted to the legislature yesterday by a retired judge. So these aren't just random people. These aren't people that are with groups that they say are tied to Donald Trump or Trump supporters. This is more of an independent investigation, and I would recommend that everyone go and read that report for themselves. You can find the link on my Substack at emeralddv3.substack.com, but don't even take my word for it, though I try to break it down for you in my Substack. Read it for yourself, because there are some very important findings in this report that was submitted to the Wisconsin legislature, and I'll highlight some of those. But also keep in mind that what you're seeing in Wisconsin in this report also parlays to other battleground states like Pennsylvania and Georgia, which are also mentioned in this report. And when talking to people in both of those states, we're hearing similar situations. So number one, this report found that the CTCL, the Civic for Tech and Civic Life, that was the Zuckerberg, we just call them Zuckerberg, spent $8.8 million in very, very blue cities. This report said attributes or categorizes this spending to bribery. It says it constitutes bribery because this was used for ballot harvesting, nursing home voting, and that was another important aspect of this report. And they gave some pretty staggering figures in nursing homes. Over 90 nursing homes in the state of Wisconsin had 100% voter turnout in nursing homes. That is an unheard of figure of voter turnout for our elderly in a nursing home. It's also important to note that particularly in Racine County, Wisconsin, the sheriff found that the Wisconsin Election Commission did not dispatch the required deputies, special deputies, to oversee nursing home voting because it can be rampant for fraud, right? They can easily submit votes for these elderly people. So that was one aspect of this. It's also important to note that in this report, and they go into great detail about how they're being blocked on so many fronts in trying to even investigate voter fraud, just trying to find out, not to even prove that there's not fraud there. So with the voting machines, and there's different companies that work, voting machine companies that worked in the election in Wisconsin, they have subpoenaed these voting machines just to try to find out, everything was on the up and up and exactly what happened. But these companies do not comply or have not complied with the subpoenas. Now, the investigator, the special counsel, and the judge felt that this was wrong because they're a third-party vendor for the people. They should have to answer to the people and show how they conduct our elections. They also found that an attorney from Brooklyn, New York, basically ran Green Bay's, the city of Green Bay's election out of a Hyatt hotel there and had set up a private Wi-Fi connection. So lots in this report. And again, I recommend everybody goes and read it for themselves. We've been gaslit so much by the corporate media and by Democrat politicians and even some Republican politicians saying there's no such thing as voter fraud. But this report is extremely detailed and it's huge and it has implications for the entire country.
Okay, Emerald, let's say we actually do get to the bottom of this, and I'm not hopeful because, as you pointed out, the entire system seems to be highly invested in not actually digging into this. But what if we dig into this and we find out, oh my gosh, there was all this voter fraud? I guess the next question always is, what does that mean for the future? What do we do now?
And that is the big debate. I think there's a lot of people who question, well, how does our Constitution align, with if this was fraud? And there's the question of who is actually in the Oval Office. There's constitutional debates on that in every forum I think I visit. I was just at CPAC. That was one of the big discussions, maybe not on the main stage, but with, goers and politicos and pundits just browsing around and having that conversation. But there is a question of what happens going forward. Now, Donald Trump was asked that question in regards specifically to Pennsylvania on Saturday before his address before CPAC as to if he feels confident that some of the anomalies, some of the ignoring of the laws, or other potential fraud from the 2020 election has been addressed going forward ahead of 2022 and 2024. He didn't sound very confident. He suggested, well, we're finding out more every day about what happened, but you can see, like in Georgia, I was just in Georgia a couple weeks ago talking to people, visiting the state house there with a group of Georgia citizens who were dropping off 40,000 affidavits to try to get the Georgia legislature to address what they say are election fraud and crimes and to address it going forward. So to try to fix it before the midterms, fix it before the next presidential election cycle. And they feel that the Georgia legislature is, despite what they say in the bills that have been passed, one bill specifically that's been passed, that it really has not fixed things in a great way. And they see a lot of the same practices out of the Secretary of State's office that they saw ahead of 2020. So they're extremely concerned.
Okay, Emerald, well, that sounds suicidal for a Republican-led legislature of any state to not want greater election integrity when we know Democrats cheat. They always cheat. They're going to cheat as much as they can. Why won't Republicans get on board? What's the deal?
Well, I think in some states, it's not just Democrats who have been cheating. And if you look back to what Democrats have said in the past, some of them had expressed before any Republicans, especially Republican voters, ever highlighted concerns about voting technology or voting practices. Democrats had raised concerns about it. It's not, though we saw a lot of more left-leaning Democrat cheating, especially via Zuckerberg in the 2020 election, it wasn't just Democrats who wanted rid of Donald Trump. There were a lot of establishment Republicans and a lot of those in Georgia who would have liked to have seen Donald Trump gone because his policies didn't exactly line up with how they had set up their policies, which have been very beneficial to them, both professionally and personally.
Okay, Zuckerberg, you keep bringing him up. Why? He spent all this money. Is he somehow, I mean, what did he do?
Well, Zuckerberg set up a nonprofit called the Center for Tech and Civic Life. That was a way to funnel his money. So millions and millions and millions of dollars went through this nonprofit into battleground states, particularly. So you saw a lot of Zuckerbergs in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. And it went primarily to very blue areas. It was spent on ballot harvesting boxes. According to this Wisconsin report, it is also tied to a ballot harvesting app in Wisconsin. They found similar ballot tracking applications in Georgia and Pennsylvania that are detailed a little bit in this Wisconsin report. It went to, as I said, turning out the vote in nursing homes. It went to lots of different initiatives that would benefit Democrats particularly. So it went through blue areas. There's lots of questions about how this money was spent, if it should have even been received and spent. And in some areas, it was used in lieu of the public funds that were already set aside for elections. So it wasn't even necessary, begging the question, why was it used? And why was it infused in the areas, and why did those elections officials accept the Zuckerberg? As I said, the Wisconsin report by the special counsel says it constitutes bribery, the money that Mark Zuckerberg infused into Wisconsin.
Hey, thanks so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. You heard me. Like it, subscribe. You'll get a lot more of it and a lot more of me.